Oh, the best way to begin is to begin. I have seen lots of pictures of you and your granddaughter. You look like you're over the moon.
You could say that. You could say that. You would not be wrong, because I am. I didn't know what this is going to be like. I'm not a real big kids guy. I get kind of antsy with them and everything. But this is, I don't know. There's just something about this that's next level for me.
Next level. That's yes. That's a great way to describe it. You say you're not around kids, but you're very close to your daughter.
Oh yes, I am. She is the exception. Actually, what I was speaking of was the way I was around kids before she came along.
I see. Yeah. Well, I know I've got friends who are like that.
Yeah.
And, if it was someone else's kids, okay, up to a point. Mm-hmm. But with your own, and especially with the grandchild, it's as far as you want to take it, Yeah. I mean, they do. My daughter just finished her freshman year at Texas Tech.
Yeah.
And I look at this gorgeous, intelligent, strong-willed young woman who is more than I could have ever asked for, and you've got one of those.
Yes, I do.
What does she do?
She works in marketing.
Marketing.
I'm not sure exactly where, but she's got a gig that she really digs, and like I don't know all the specifics of it or anything like that, but she digs it, and she's really good at it, and that's what's important. And when she, went away to have the baby, they said, "You want to come back? You got your place."
Wow.
Which is cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a tribute to her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got an older son. My younger son's in the film business, so I know what he does, and my daughter's a really good writer, and I hope she pursues that. My older son has a journalism degree, and he works in sales, and I can't tell you exactly what he does. I just hear he's really good at it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
It's like, don't ask me where she works. I just know she's doing okay.
Yeah, that's kind of where I fall on it too. And hey, I'll take that.
Yeah,
any day of the week.
Absolutely. Do you feel like that her interest in marketing may have come from what you've done for a living for so many years?
No, not really, because she really didn't get that involved in what I did.
But she went to shows and things like that.
She did that. She was around.
Yeah.
But I don't think she was ever really taken by it or anything like that.
Probably a good thing.
I think this is something she just kind of fell into, you know?
Wow. And when you see somebody gets into some sort of content creation like marketing or something like that, for those of us who have done that professionally, I think it's very fulfilling in a way, because you realize that person's always going to have a way to express themselves.
Yeah.
And not every job allows you that.
That's right. And it's a job you get because you can.
Yeah.
And it's also something that allows you to develop it further, you know?
And you have to be bright to do it.
Yeah, you do.
And very perceptive and empathetic and all those things. So you've got to really, I could see, and I've seen pictures of the two of you at baseball games.
Yeah.
Does she share your deep and abiding love of the great game?
She does. She does. She is a baseball girl through and through.
Really?
She thinks nothing of coming over to our house, and if I don't have the TV on baseball, she goes, "You're not watching the game?" And she will make me get it on.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you call her the night the Rangers won the World Series, or did she call you?
I think I called her. Yeah.
You got into the radio business in
79 at the zoo.
Paid intern or an unpaid intern?
I was as unpaid as you could possibly be. I was not making any money up there, but I was spending every waking hour of every waking day that I possibly could.
What was it like working there?
It was one of the greatest experiences I've ever had. I've been really lucky, and I know you have been very lucky on this front too, because I've been around and been a part of, to a greater or lesser degree, a couple of casts that were just off the charts good, off the charts talented, and one of them was off the charts successful, and I know you know what that's about. And at that place, at that time, it was a little, things were a little, shall we say, a little more freewheeling, if you will. And there were a lot of people up there that maxed that aspect of it out quite a bit.
Absolutely.
But hey, I was new to it. I was in there. I had a bird's eye view of the whole thing, and I loved it.
Was radio something that you loved early or
Yes,
thought
it
about
was.
early? What turned you on to it?
The fact that it was always on in the house when I was a kid.
Yeah.
My mother would always play it every day when I was, 2, 3, 4 years old. And I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to exactly what it was. I just knew that they played music, and it was music that I generally liked. And then Elvis came along, and that generally liked, went to really liked, and then later on the Beatles came along, and that turned into, okay, this is where it's at.
This is where it's at.
Yeah.
You're as much of a Dallas kid as I am a Fort Worth kid. You grew up in Oak Cliff, so you know the territory. It must have been really fun to be successful in your own hometown.
Yeah. I'm sure you know about that.
I never had to learn any new street names.
Yeah. And I don't know, it was always a lot of fun to run into, people that I used to know back in the day. Because back when I was a kid, I was a little bit on the, shall we say, retiring side. I was just kind of there. I was kind of in the background. I didn't do a whole lot to call attention to myself because I had a pretty severe inferiority complex. But, later on, all that changed. And it was really cool to watch the way that changed.
And music was a big part of that change, too.
It was.
I mean, you were a drummer, I think, initially, if I remember right.
I was.
Yeah.
And to watch the way, people would react to me differently over the years than they had earlier.
I remember junior high school parties when we'd set up a sound system with an 8-track player, and I realized really early that if you sat near the 8-track players, girls would come up and want you to play a song for them. And I found a way to get them to pay attention to me. And that's all it took.
Yes.
Because I was a wallflower as well.
Yeah.
I didn't really know where I fit in. But once I realized that if you could play a guitar or play a tune or stand on stage for one reason or another, people would look.
Yeah.
And I felt more comfortable up there than I did sitting down here.
That's one thing that I've always really envied about you. You always seem perfectly at ease behind a microphone in any situation.
It's because
I've never seen you where you seemed out of place, uncomfortable. You've always been in control. It's always been like you were the guy who is supposed to be there.
Well, thank you very much, first of all. The benefits of having an inexhaustible supply of bullshit cannot be overstated.
No, it can't.
Because there's a scene.
Believe me, I know and understand the value of that.
Well, and you've been in those situations where the script flies away or the prompter fails or whatever, and there you go. And
you're on your own.
That amazing scene in the old Aaron Sorkin series, Sport Night, where William H. Macy plays the consultant trying to fix the station. And in doing so, he goes up to the anchors just before air and he steals their scripts and unplugs the prompter. And that makes them authentic.
Right.
It makes them relatable, And so there's a sense of it, though, and I've watched you do this, too. I've watched you on stage. And people, whatever you say, and I don't mean for you to blush here, but whatever you say, you have a way of making people lean in. They want to hear, unlike some of us who have very loud, bellowing voices and we talk over the ramp and that sort of thing, it's almost what you don't do that gets their attention.
I'll take that.
You're not slick.
No, I'm not.
You're not what the consultancy would call polished.
Yes, they don't like me.
But you are nails when it comes to being, for lack of a better expression, real.
Well, I try to connect with people. That's all I try to do. And I do it just by being what I am, because if I connect with people any other way, then they wind up seeing through that sooner or later.
Who was the guy early on, or girl, or either one, who you looked at and said, that's how I want to do it? That's my template for success.
Wow, there were a lot of those, and most of them were at the zoo when I got there. John LaBella was certainly one of those. I mean, you talk about a guy who was a pro, who was slick, who was never flustered. Now, he was going to stick to the script. He was not going to start riffing or anything like that. He used to call himself Vanilla LaBella. And, I mean, if you knew him, he was anything but that.
Really?
But but that was his bit. That was what he did. That was who he was. He was going to get up there. He was going to do whatever the situation called for. If there was the guy back there, he was going to give the guy what the guy wanted. And it was going to be delivered in as professional and polished a manner as it possibly could be. And everybody out there hearing it was going to know that. Yeah. And I used to look up to him a whole lot because, I mean, I never saw that guy lose his shit on the air.
That was Larry Dixon for me.
Yeah,
at KVIL.
yeah, I'll bet.
I mean, he was, first of all, he was an 8x10 glossy, a handsome guy, and he had a manner about him, and he was just so smooth. He never stumbled. And he could do more over a 13-second intro than I could over, 2 minutes of dead air.
Yeah.
And people like that, that comportment, I guess, is the best way, and the self-discipline that they have, that it radiates. Mm-hmm. And so LaBella was one of those.
Oh, yeah. LaBella was definitely one of those. I mean, he really, he was kind of a mysterious guy because he didn't really hang out much. He didn't ever spend any money. We always used to joke about how he wore the same pants every day and they were cardboard. And, he was kind of off to himself, and I never really understood that. Now, later on, he got married, and he found a woman, got married, and she brought him out of that a little bit.
Really?
And he became a little bit more like the rest of us.
Well, I'm sure that his partner in the mornings also contributed to bringing him out of his shell, because how do you not be affected by working with Mr. Rody?
Yeah, that was one of another very unusual individual that I've crossed paths with. And I really admire that guy, too, because I've never seen anything like him. I've never seen anybody who could go into a station, do the morning show, go out to the transmitter, do maintenance on it, figure out what was wrong with the signal to the most minute detail, come back and do afternoon drive. I mean, he could do virtually anything that needed doing at a radio station.
Brilliant man.
Yeah, he is. He is. If only he would have been a little bit better directed at the time, but he was what he was, and what he was he just got in there and winged it every day.
That is too important to wait and come back to, the matter of direction. And I watch so many outlets now, platforms, TV, radio, listen to it all, really. ADHD is a wonderful tool in our business. It's like walking into a control room. Every monitor is on.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you almost got to have it.
You got to have it. And I hear very little direction, and the fundamental reason that doesn't exist is because those positions have been eliminated.
Yeah.
The person who's going to be your second eyes on your copy or whatever, they're gone.
Yeah.
And those that remain are too fearful of a call from HR to ever say anything that might be taken the wrong way, like you should do this or try this. Oh, well, are you, there's a whole different dynamic out there. You can't get away with what we used to do.
No,
you just can't.
You can't. And, I haven't talked to Johnny in a long time, but the last time I did, he was running the Fort Worth Pirate over there, which is a radio station that can be heard for a couple of blocks around it,
And loving every minute of it.
Yeah, loving every minute. I mean, that was exactly what he wanted to do. Believe me, if he were willing to play the game and it was what he wanted to do, he could go into any radio station in the market, any radio station in any market, and tell them, I want to do this, and he could probably talk them into it.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're smart, they would know that he is really that good, and he could do it.
I've noticed over time that one hallmark of a successful broadcast operation is that people on the staff are constantly trying to impress the other members of the staff, make them laugh.
Yes.
If I can make John Rody laugh, then I've got something.
Yes.
If I can phrase this in a certain way that makes LaBella smile, then I've done something.
Yeah.
Was it that way for you?
Yes, it was. Oh, I was such a puppy dog around those guys. It's just unbelievable. And any time that I got any kind of nod of approval out of either of them. Now, LaBella, I mean, I could make him laugh every now and then because we both had a weird sense of humor, and a lot of the time we would find things about the records we were playing, that he was playing, that we would think were funny, you know?
Yeah.
And that kind of become a punchline for us.
We had a valet. We called him the station valet, and his name was Jay Currington. And he'd been a manager of, I think, the Lubies there on Buckner. No, where is it? Mockingbird. It was on Mockingbird. It's now East Side something or other.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And he'd been there for years. And so we hired him to come in and just kind of, he was the officer of morale. And I knew that if I could get him laughing, because he had the most wonderful laugh.
Yeah.
If I could get him laughing, then I would be brave enough to take it into Ron Chapman. But I had to make him laugh first. And it was kind of that way. You know, you had these test focus groups for our own little content and material. You know, once it passed muster there, then okay, maybe this could go on the air.
Yeah, except I didn't go any further with LaBella and Rody. If I could make them laugh, that was good enough for me.
That's all you needed.
Yeah,
so
that was good enough for me.
You were there at the zoo for its glory days. And then at one point you decided, I think this is when I actually met you. I had known Greg, the Hammer, Greg Williams, prior to meeting you.
Yes, I know you have.
Because we had worked in the nightclub business together.
Right.
We'd been at Billy Bob's Texas and Players in Arlington. And then he and you started coming into my field of vision, I think, when I was working for the Cowboys as one of the entertainment consultants in the late 80s, 88, 89, when Jerry bought the team.
Right.
And then early into the 90s. And that was about the time you started formulating this ticket. I do want to stay with WBAP for a minute, because at that location, at that station, there's a whole other set of legends you're working with.
Oh, yeah.
You know? I mean, you've gone from legendary station to legendary station, which most of us in this business don't get to do.
I've been really lucky.
What was that like?
Well, I was a very lowly minion over there. Most of them probably don't even remember that I was there. But boy, watching those guys do their thing, the skill, the professionalism, the no-nonsense way they carried on with their business, you know, especially guys like Don Day, one of the afternoon DJs, incredible voice, incredible talent.
Wonderful guy.
So smooth. Great guy.
Yeah.
And then you had Hal and Dick, Hal J. and Dick Siegel. And when I got there, they were doing mornings, but that was about the time that they were going to start doing afternoon drive.
Yes, I remember very well.
And that seemed so weird to me that these guys would do mornings, and yet they were, with all that talent there, they were so bereft of anything strong in the afternoons that I guess they just went to him one day and said, look, what would it take? You know? And I'm sure it took a lot.
Yeah.
But they did it, and they did it for years, and man, I really love those guys.
You said something once that stuck with me very deeply, and it was that for every year you work on the morning show, it takes 2 off your life.
Yeah.
And I don't think people really understand what doing a morning show is like, and then to turn around and try to do afternoons too. As Joyner did, you know, for all those months that he actually flew to Chicago and back.
Yeah.
He eventually did it from his bedroom.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, because if you don't, you're going to die.
Yeah.
This business takes a lot out of you.
And of course, when he started doing that, I don't think you could do it that way then, could you?
No, but I think they kind of invented it for him.
Yeah.
In many ways.
Well, good on them.
The what was it? The landline.
Yes.
Or whatever we used to call it. ISDN, I think is what it was.
Right.
And I know when Chapman, at one point, he had a home in Florida, and he'd go down there for vacation, and he'd broadcast from his closet, and he'd look at video monitors showing the Texas Department of Transportation video monitors showing the traffic jam so he could relate to what was happening here. But he wasn't here. That was not available, you know, in 1984, 85.
No, it was not.
And you're around Grandpa Urine. You're around Randy Galloway.
Yes.
You're around that whole sports department, which was significant, if not, you know, formidable.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was a giant then, the blowtorch, right? And was there an awareness of, oh my God, I'm in a place like this? Or,
oh yeah, always.
Yeah.
Always.
An appreciation.
Oh yeah, I had that at the zoo. I had it there. I've had it everywhere I've been in this game. You know?
Yep.
I mean, I've been really, really lucky.
So
and don't think I don't know it.
In those days, I mean, at what point did the idea of the ticket really land? You know, it had to be being around all of these influences, watching what Rody and LaBella did, watching what the sports department at WBAP did, being a baseball fan, understanding the power of storytelling because of how baseball is broadcast.
Yeah.
all of those things start to coalesce about when did the light bulb go off?
Oh, well, there was a period in there where I couldn't find a gig anywhere. So what I started doing, or what happened to me, I guess is a better way to put this, was I fell into what became known as the tech bubble, where you had all these companies like, and don't ask me how this worked because I have no idea, but all these companies like Southwestern Bell, AT&T, GTE, companies like that, outfits like that. Like I say, I don't know how this happened, but all of a sudden they became flush with money.
Tons of money.
They had money out the ass. And they knew that if they didn't do something with it, then they were going to get taxed for it. And so they had to find a way to spend that money. And what they did was they set up all these telephone deals where you call this number and then you press 1 for news, you press 2 for weather, you press 3 for sports. Well, I was a sports guy for GTE back then, for GTE On Call. And nobody remembers that. Nobody even listened to it, I don't think. Nobody ever said anything to me about it. But what it did was it got me into the loop. And it was there that I started through that, because I would go to all the games and stuff, that I became friends with Grego, and I became friends with Craig Miller. And those guys were probably the first two that I closely aligned myself with that would one day turn into the Ticket.
Just in the press box, running into them.
Yeah, just running into them at games.
Arlington Stadium, ballpark in Arlington.
And we quickly became a real nuisance for everybody. Because while they would be trying to watch the games and carry on in that serious way that sports guys like to do,
yeah,
we were down there making each other laugh. And before long, I began to notice that we would have 3 or 4 people down there every night who would come down there and just sit near us, and they wouldn't try to participate or anything like that, but they would just sit near us so they could. It was like, those guys are really having a lot of fun.
It's like a Lukenbach jam session.
Yeah, I think I'll go check it out.
So you're formulating these ideas about relationships with these guys and what might be, and you're talking amongst yourselves and that sort of thing. And was there ever a point in the birth of the Ticket where you told yourself, "Oh, this won't work"? You tried to talk yourself out of your best idea?
No,
really?
No, there was not.
You were both feet up, wheels up, and go.
I had to believe it.
Yeah,
I had to believe in it, because if I didn't, nobody else would.
The assemblage of the talent, as you've said before. You got most everybody you wanted. And, that was step one. Step two was creating this station where everyone in the business wanted to work.
Yeah.
You created
that was unforeseen.
And but it happens to all the good ones. If you grew up in the 60s, you wanted to work at Cliff.
Yeah.
If you grew up in the late 70s or 80s, you wanted to work at KVIL or the Zoo or someplace like that. Because and then you went to North Texas and studied under Bill Mercer and learned the craft there. And by that time, you're ready to be a board op or an intern at whichever station it was.
Right.
The Ticket had droves of people wanting to work there. Why do you think that was?
Because to them, it sounded like fun. It sounded like fun, and that sound was very real because it was fun.
Just the combination, the chemistry.
The combination of that group. At that time, it was us against the world, because nobody thought we could do what we set out to do.
And yet you still have tons of people who want to work at that station. And I don't think that radio understands what or how important that is to its sustenance, because if you don't have people who really want to come do what you do and do it the way you do it and try to impress you like we try to impress Rhodey and LaBella and Chapman and those guys, then you've really cut off your farm system.
Yeah.
And I think two of the worst things that we've ever done in radio was drop our interns. Most stations don't have them anymore. So there's nobody there to learn, and take salespeople off salary and put them on straight commission, because you get a younger, more transactional sales force. I remember Chapman used to go out to clients and say, here's how, or go to the sales staff and say, here's how we sell my show. Was there an attitude in how the ticket was sold when you went out to clients, when you approached them? This is how we need, because it wasn't like any other radio station that you're trying to sell.
Well, we went through several different sales phases while I was there, but I would say, and I didn't get that involved in it anyway, they really didn't involve us too much. But I would say for the most part, it was probably sold as far as the methodology of it, it was probably not terribly different from any of the other stations, I would think. But now I don't know that. You're taking me onto turf that I don't have a whole lot of firsthand knowledge of.
Well, it certainly sold itself to young people wanting to come to that station.
Yeah,
and work.
it did.
And because it was different, because it was unique, because, it felt like, I think the moment that the ticket came into its own was on 9/11. It was a great station up to that point, but on 9/11, it became a legendary station because unlike so many sports shows and stations where everybody stays in their lane and we're all into analytics and stats, and now with gambling, of course, we're going to talk about odds and all of that sort of stuff. But it's the ability to go out of your lane and do other things and do them extremely well. And, I mean, that had to be an unusually difficult day in many ways because you're talking about a horrible subject, of course, and yet you guys managed to pull it off in a way that was intimate and relatable on a level that I don't know most stations could do. What was that experience like?
Well, all we were doing was getting in there and talking about what we saw, what we'd heard, what we read, and the way it made us feel. That was really it. We were just sharing that with each other. And fortunately for us, there were a lot of people out there on the other side who listened to that and said, yeah, that's how I feel too.
Yeah.
And we really did strike a chord. I really think that's probably the most significant thing that's ever happened that has made the ticket what it's turned into. I mean, that was where the game changed for all of us.
I mean, there's no doubt you guys came along at a great time. The Cowboys were ascending.
Yeah.
They're going to a Super Bowl, 2 or 3, right around the time the ticket was born.
Yeah. I mean, we went on the air and a week later, we were at the Super Bowl.
It was a great time to be in the business, wasn't it?
It was.
And that back when the station would pay for those things, And, and I remember getting off of a trip to San Francisco off the bus at Fisherman's Wharf at the Sheraton because we'd had a successful quarter, and our general manager was at the bottom of the stairs of the bus handing everybody an envelope with $200 cash for walking around money to celebrate. They flew the whole staff to San Francisco. Can't think of doing that now. No. But
That's awesome, though.
The way, dude, I mean, nobody left that station. And that's part of the tickets legend, too, is that very few people over the years have left.
Yeah.
The other thing that you remember I came to see you just before you guys signed on. I thought maybe I could fit in there. I never would have made it. Because one of the unique things about every member of the ticket staff is you got to be able to take a joke.
Yeah.
And still do. That's hard to find, especially in our business.
Yeah. The other thing is about the crew that we put together is that none of us had really done anything before. I probably had done the more than any of the rest of them, but all the rest of those guys were low-level minions at the stations that they were at. But I firmly believed, and I had a few fights about this, I firmly believed that we were on the right track. Occasionally, the other two guys that were putting the station together with me would come to me and go, look, man, we need some big-name talent. Who can you get? Well, number one, I couldn't get anybody because anybody you would want is under contract.
Right.
Number two, I didn't tell them this, but I couldn't get anybody because if I go up to them and say, hey, why don't you come do this with me, they're going to laugh at me. I was nothing then,
Right.
And I just had to tell them over and over again, look, I really believe we can make this work. I really believe these guys are going to turn into something. And if they don't, you can fire me.
You know, you got a couple of those big names at the very outset. They didn't stay for that long. But you also ended up with Norm Hitzkus on your staff. And I remember when he was on KLIF, and to call him a skeptic would be putting it mildly.
Oh, yeah.
And yet he came over and made that transition at his stage in life when, why would you need to? You know, I'm Norm Hitzkus. I don't have to change. He did. Turns out he had a great sense of humor about himself, and he was not all stats, and nobody was more so than he.
Yeah.
But by the same token, he fit in.
Yeah, I knew Norm ahead of time, and I thought that if he would fit in, he could fit in.
Very, very astute. Yes.
And he came in with an open mind, and he wanted to fit in. And it was difficult at first because, we'd gone up against him for years. And another thing about all those guys is, man, we were very insular. It was us against the world.
Yeah.
We formed a tight circle. And whenever somebody tried to protrude that circle or invade that circle, they were sent away.
I don't know that I've ever told this story publicly. Maybe I have, I don't remember. But if you'll recall, the KVIL studios at one time were at Central and Mockingbird.
Yes.
And the Capital Bank building, it's now Mockingbird Station. And someone...
That was our first studio, too.
Someone had... That's right, it was. You moved into our old studios. I forgot about that. Somebody had put a billboard just north of our building and a big inflatable eagle advertising the eagle.
Yeah.
On purpose.
Yeah.
You could see it from our control room. Someone... and I don't know who, put a hole in that with a handgun, and it was, I'm told, beautiful watching it go. That's the attitude we had. We are up against everybody. I don't know that any other station ever had bumper stickers that said, "I hate your call letters." You know, we had those. So we knew we'd done something right. And the people who came and took themselves too seriously did not last. You had to find a little humility there, and Norm did.
Yeah.
And good grief. How many years did he work there after coming over? 20?
About. Thereabouts.
That's amazing. When you look around now, you've got to say to yourself, the talent is out there. They're just on other platforms now. They're doing their own podcasts, TikTok, that sort of thing. How do you get those minds turned back to broadcasting if it's even possible now?
I don't think you do.
Really?
I think that ship has sailed.
Do you now?
I don't mean to paint a bleak picture or anything like that, but you just have more control over it. You don't get interfered with. And if you're willing to do the work of, getting it up there and everything like that and all that goes along with running your own enterprise, I think most people now who would want to do something like radio are conditioned to the idea that that's a better way.
You were talking a minute ago about going in and discussing with your partners, okay, we got to stay the course. We got to keep doing this. You've got to be a real good arguer, good debater, somebody who comes with facts and can inspire at the same time, because somebody has to walk into those meetings and defend the team, defend the concept right now, and that's even harder.
Yeah.
Let alone finding the people to do it, to be able to go into corporate where a station, a broadcast chain owns 1,000 stations. That's hard because they've heard it and they only care about the comps and they care about the stock price. They don't necessarily care about whether the idea makes it or not.
I need look no further than my most recent adventure to see that.
That's what I kind of figured.
Yeah.
When that you didn't have anybody to go in and stake out the ground for you.
No, or if we did, I didn't know who that was. It's a very big place up there.
Didn't have a director until 6 months in?
No, something like that.
See, it would seem to me that the first thing you need is somebody who can discipline this wild team of horses.
Yeah.
And get them all moving in the same direction and do it in such a way, not like they did when we were growing up in the business where tape reels were flying and things like that, but walking up to somebody and saying, hey, that was great. Next time try this. You don't see it in TV. You don't see it in radio. Those positions, as we said, have been eliminated. But without that direction, it's chaos.
Yeah. And if you get it these days, I don't know where you get it from.
But that lineup.
If you're lucky, you're in a situation where, You may have somebody on the staff that's a little bit more experienced than the rest of them that everybody kind of looks up to, and
Yeah.
maybe he can have those kinds of conversations with them.
But that's difficult because a lot of us in this business are insular. We
Yes,
do hang
that's right.
by the wall, and
That's
we
right.
don't want to speak up.
That's right.
Even when we get the opportunity. I mean, I was acting program director at KRLD for like 3 weeks before I got in a fight with Cameron Fairchild, got myself and the station sued. Probably not the best choice for that position. We're not very good people all the time.
Not all the time we're not.
And you got to have that assemblage of talent, though, you had at the Freak. I mean, from top to bottom, that was amazing. Did it not have the right caretaker? Did it not have the right person in the carpeted office upstairs believing in the idea?
I think that was a lot of it. I just don't think that they were fully bought into the idea of what we were trying to do. But look, at the end of the day, this was on us. And if it worked, that would be because of us, but it didn't. And we got to wear that, too.
I knew instantly why you went back into radio, because I'd been experiencing it, too. When you've been around a culture that's creative and energetic and just can't wait to get on that microphone and have some fun, and you walk away from it, it's like an amputation.
Yeah.
And you miss it, and that part of you aches. And
Yeah.
Was that what called you back?
More or less. I think I handled it pretty well because I was a pretty happy retiree, and really.
But what does that mean? You're not going to go fishing, were you? I mean,
Well,
you've
no,
got a lot of...
no, I wasn't going to go fishing or anything like that, but I was very comfortable with the idea that okay, here's a new day, and I might not do anything today.
Or you might do all the things you'd never had time to do when you were at a station. Yeah,
right.
I get it, totally.
I was very comfortable with it, and it was not something that I had to do. It was not something I was particularly driven to do, but the opportunity came up, and I wanted to do it. Now, can I just say one thing about this, put it out there? The idea got out there that because I was involved, I was the instigator of the thing. That is not true. It was put together by Ben and Skin, and I was actually the last guy in.
They have...
I was kind of an afterthought.
Talk about a couple of creative people.
Yeah, they're great.
Brilliant creators. I mean, in every way. Well, they got a brewery now, for gosh sakes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing what they can do.
They are the two most enterprising guys in radio I think I've ever been around.
Hustlers.
Yeah.
They're true hustlers. And I mean that in a good sense. They can sell you on an idea, inspire you to believe in that idea.
Yes, they can. They're great at it.
It's just that you're dealing with people who are only inspired by the stock price.
Yeah.
And
that's where we're at these days.
That's where we're at these days. And yet I can't imagine that entire staff takes flight and doesn't land somewhere. And certainly in the future, if radio stations become, what they were before deregulation, normally priced, I would think is the right phrase. Mm-hmm. Some of those people might wind up owning a station or two and doing pretty good with them. I'd hope.
All I can tell you about that is it's a really big world out there.
But you got into this incredible romper room of mostly younger people, I would think.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of energy, lots of ideas, lots of creativity. Was there a point where you looked around and go, man, I missed this, even if it was only a short period of time?
Yeah. I mean, I loved it. I loved doing this show with Jeff Kavanaugh and Julie Dobbs. And I love the fact that my friend Michael Gruber, Shoopy.
I just met him recently. I saw him at El Vecino in Lake Highlands. And he didn't know who I was, and I walked over and I said, man, I got to tell you, I just really admire your talent. Sorry what happened. I hated to see it. I think it would have worked. But there's a talented guy.
Oh, he's incredible.
He's got a sense for moment, the right clip, the right drop, the right bed, whatever it is. And you can't teach it.
You know what you have to have, what you have to be able to do what he does? You got to be able to get inside the head of the people you're working with and think along with them, maybe think ahead of them. Think, okay, where is he going to take this? And what can I do to make it funny or make it better or make it this or make it that? He's great at that.
He sees the feel like nobody else in the producer's booth.
He does.
Really, really does. And you, have worked with some incredible folks. You and Danny Bayless. The minute you guys went to the Freak, my first thought was there was going to be a lot more emphasis on I don't want to use the hip scene or the cool scene or whatever it is, but you guys know, there are very few people I know of who know more about music, certainly in a local sense, than the two of you. And so I thought it was going to be more early alt radio, underground radio kind of stuff, and it turned out to be extraordinarily entertaining, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be either. I don't know if it would have been better had it been that way or not, because if you're going to do that, you got to have others who think along those lines with you. In fact, you got to have a whole crew who's kind of oriented that way. You know, somebody who can shift around to something else, but are oriented that way. And I don't know, we never really had that beyond me and him up there.
Right. Well, you know, missed opportunities. Who knows where it would have gone had the company stayed with it a little bit longer. And, you know, the tragic thing here, and you may not be able to comment on this, that's never stopped me, when you see stations that are suffering in terms of stock price over a 2-year, 5-year period, maybe even have delved into bankruptcy recently, and yet the executives still get their performance bonuses. You have to wonder if the priorities to run a successful broadcast operation aren't upside down. You're being diplomatic. I can see it in your face.
I am being diplomatic because I really have got nothing against anybody up there, you know? I mean, I had fun working there.
And you have the reputation of being the curmudgeon. I think you're the nice guy, and I'm the old fart here. You know,
well, that curmudgeon reputation was very carefully crafted, and I really wish today that I didn't have to wear it the way I do. But you know, that's the way I wanted to come off at a certain time, and a lot of people latched on to it, and that's what they still think of me. So be it. We play on.
It was a great bit.
Yeah.
It was a total lie because I've always known you to be a very warm individual. I remember when we were at the Rangers fantasy camp when they had it at what's now Choctaw Stadium.
Yes.
Many years ago. I remember being in the locker room and hanging out. That was what an experience, right? I mean, Ferguson Jenkins and Nolan Ryan and Danny Darwin and all these great names that we grew up with.
That was incredible.
You're like a 9-year-old kid in there. You and Greg both were just, wow.
It was just... It's just one of those things you never think you could possibly ever get to do. And
but that's been both our careers.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it is.
You look back, and I saw you say the other day that you know, this experience has left you open to entertaining other things in the future. You talked, as you came in today, about maybe continuing your podcast, which I thought was one of the great podcasts, and I've done like 2 or 3, but there are other shows that I wish I could get on, and yours was one of those, you know, so you may bring that back?
Could happen. You know, it's a big world, and I don't know if I'll get back into radio again. I don't know. I was talking to a guy from the Dallas Morning News about this the other day, and I mentioned to him, and this is the first time I'd ever said it out loud, but I've been thinking of it, I just don't know if there's a place for a guy like me in the game anymore.
Yeah,
I just don't know.
That's a thought.
Yeah.
It's a thought.
And if there's not, then okay, we'll figure out something else. Maybe we'll bring back the podcast. But I just don't know that in the way that radio is constructed, run, the way those who run it think of it, I just don't know if there's a place for somebody who does what I do and a situation where the strength that I have would be applicable.
But you loved the time with that crew at the Freak.
I did.
And it was obvious. You were having fun. And
I was having fun.
You would not be averse to having fun again.
Oh, no. I would not be averse
I want to go back
to
the Texas music connection here just a second, because I've talked with other people like Angus Wynn about this. Why is there not a museum of Texas music, and why is it not in Dallas? Because it should be. There should be one here.
The answer to that question for me is I don't know, and I don't know.
Yeah. It seems like there ought to be enough people to get together. I mean, Ray Charles lived in Oak Cliff.
Yes.
There should be a marker in front of that house. How long did it take to get a statue of Stevie Ray Vaughan finally put up?
Yeah.
And, you know, Fort Worth doesn't have any trouble at all selling its heritage. Dallas often seems to want to tear it down. I mean, you've been here your whole life. What do you think it is about this wonderful city otherwise that doesn't seem to treasure its past very much?
I wish I knew, because that's absolutely right. Everything that happened here once upon a time stays once upon a time.
It does. I have to tell you another story. We had planned an anniversary celebration of the Beatles' only live Dallas show, September 18th, 1964.
Mm-hmm.
We had the city on board. We had school district on board. We were going to, create art projects.
Who's the we here?
K-Love, the city of Dallas.
Okay.
We had the best tribute band we could find. They were going to come out and play the original set list at the Convention Center Coliseum, which is where the show took place. And by the way, up until recently, the seats were in the same place. We were going to charge original ticket prices, come in your best 60s sharkskin suit or whatever, your penny loafers, and searchlights, the works. We had it all planned out. And the date was open for the 50th anniversary. And one person in our corporate food chain said, how will we monetize that? And it killed it.
That's all it takes.
Monetize is not one of my favorite words.
No.
You come up with a good enough idea and it'll sell, and you've done it you've seen it done at the zoo. You did it at the ticket. You saw what could have been at Eagle, the Freak. I guess it's back to being the Eagle again. I do believe Camelot could return. And if it does in some way, shape, form, or fashion, you wouldn't hesitate.
No, I wouldn't.
You've never lost your love for it.
No. If Camelot came back and they wanted me, he'd tell me where to go and when to be there.
Now, I do want to ask you before, because we've spent a long time here and hopefully we've kept people listening, your love of baseball. I've always said baseball is poetry. Everything else is, prose. And it's chess. Everything else is checkers. What is it about baseball that just touches you in that deep emotional place that you just can't let go?
Well, for me, it is probably the main sports underpinning that I've ever had. It was a sport that I got into first. When I got into baseball, it was a lot bigger than football or basketball or any of the others.
Which was your team?
I don't know. I really didn't have one. We had minor league baseball here then. And I went to a lot of the games at Burnett Field in Oak Cliff and watched the Dallas-Fort Worth Rangers, as they were known then. They played most of their games in Dallas, but a few of them over in Fort Worth. And a lot of the time they'd play doubleheaders, one game in Dallas, one game in Fort Worth. Boy, I bet those guys love doing that.
Oh, my gosh. Traveling the turnpike.
Yeah, traveling the turnpike. But it was the one that I gravitated toward first, and I just never have lost my love for it. Now, over time, I've learned to love all the others, and I do love them all. But if you ask me, what are you sports-wise? Well, I'm a baseball guy.
Baseball guy.
Yeah.
I remember growing up, the only games we could get on the radio in those days were either St. Louis on KMOX, I think.
Yeah.
Or the Astros with Elston.
Gene Elston and Lowell
Pass. And, when the Rangers came to town, oh my gosh, at Arlington Stadium. And I don't think people realize what a fun place that was to watch a game, except during the day in July.
Yeah.
It was a really cool, intimate place. And you ascended all the way through this along with the Rangers, and to see that arrival and that growth and still have that fundamental appreciation of the game that goes way beyond, just what we see on the field necessarily. Was it the pacing of it? Was it the years it takes sometimes to get to the show? What was it about it that really said, okay, this is the one for me? What is it about sports that grabs you?
I don't know, because I was never a very good athlete. In every sport, there was one thing I could do. Of all those various things you need to form a skill set, there was always one thing that I could do, but I couldn't do the rest of it. I couldn't run fast. I was frightfully skinny, and I did not like contact very much, so I couldn't play football. In basketball, I was tall, but once again, I was skinny, but I couldn't handle the ball. I could shoot it, but I couldn't handle it. And in baseball, I could catch it, but I couldn't hit. I could catch it, and I could also pitch, but I couldn't throw hard. And if you couldn't throw hard, then they didn't want you pitching.
But you could tell its story.
Oh, yeah.
And you could do that better than anybody else just about, and have. I sometimes when a game, it doesn't have to be baseball, but if you don't follow Mike on Twitter, you should, because you know the game's over when you see a picture of a chapel.
Yes.
Because church has arrived.
Yes.
And the other day I saw you, and now begins Vacation Bible School,
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, I know exactly what that means because the metaphor works so great. And that's stuff you learned from the zoo, writing for Brody and LaBella, writing for yourself, and at WBAP with that, that banana bunch. And then at the Ticket all those years, Jack Hines, my partner at KRLD, used to say, if you can't put your thought on the back of a business card, you haven't thought it through. And you wound up being able to do that, whether it was working for GTE or wherever else. That's part of the game, too.
Oh, that's definitely part of the game.
Is it a part that we're coming close to losing now?
Yes, it is. It is, and that's one of the things that I dislike most about where we are in the game right now.
The inability to describe its poetry?
Yes. And the fact that people who come along now can't use their words, They just can't put their thoughts down in any sort of way that is creative or that makes them unique or makes them a little bit different from somebody else. It's all the same. It's all become standardized.
It does feel that way, and yet every once in a while you'll find someone who can use that pen like a paintbrush, and the words just whatever it is. And we still have some of those around, but where are the Bud Shrakes? Where are the Blackie Sherrods and those people? I think they're out there, and I say that because right after radio and I went separate ways, I taught at Paul Quinn College for a while. And these speech majors and communications majors would come in, and they knew what they were doing. They knew the rule of thirds and video editing and all this kind of stuff, but they didn't have names for it. They didn't know what a hard edit is, or that sort of. But they knew, but they didn't have a name. Once you gave them a name, it became real. And they look at you like you're a Jedi. Oh my gosh, I never would have thought about that. A hard cut or whatever it is. They have their own styles. I mean, they're cranking this stuff out on Instagram and TikTok, so they know how to do it. They just don't know exactly what it is they're doing. Mm-hmm. And I think those people are out there, but you got to find folks in the corporate structure who'll give them the support, the coaching, the time to pull it off.
Yeah, and I don't know if those people exist anymore.
Oh, I hope so. Because
I do too, but I haven't run across any of them lately.
So what have you not done that you'd really like to do? The one thing that you think, okay, if I'd ever had time, I would have done this. Maybe now's the time. Is there anything like that?
If there is, I haven't landed on it yet. I've pretty much gotten to do all that I hoped I would, and then some.
And Petty Theft is still playing and singing?
Yeah, Petty Theft is still around. We're still doing it.
And you've got a huge following. I mean, a lot of people love that band. I remember seeing you guys at NRH2O.
Yeah.
I think it was the first time that we ever worked a show together, and I thought to myself, man, I'm going to stick around and listen to this for a while. And you still get a big kick out of that.
Yeah, I still enjoy it quite a bit. We played just a couple nights ago.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm still like doing that. Let me ask you something.
Okay, go ahead.
What's it going to take to get you back into the game?
Enough
about me here.
Listen, the number one thing for me has always been the people you work with, even though I wasn't always very capable of treating them as well as I should have.
Nor was I.
I came out.
I got a lot of things like that I regret.
I was going to ask you, how are you and Greg now? I mean, among others, we all rub people the wrong way, but that was very painful. And I'll come back to your answer here in a second.
Okay.
But what was that like? Is it okay? Is it cool? Everything good?
Yeah, I think it's okay. Well, we had him on the show one time in the early days of The Freak, and it was all right.
That's good.
Yeah, it was all right.
That's good. It doesn't have to be great, just as long as it's all right.
Yeah, I mean, if I ever do something again, I think I would like to like if I did the podcast or something, I'd have him on.
I'd be listening to that.
Yeah,
for sure. I had to go back to, for instance, when I got out of radio, I learned to edit video, and I had always been intimidated by it. I'm good at audio, but video scared me. So I learned to do it, and when I did, I emailed or called all the editors at CBS 11 because those people are putting together 5, 6 half-hour shows a day. I was doing one a week and losing my mind. And I wrote them and I said, fellas, I had no idea. Thank you so much for all the work you did, you know. I wish I'd have done it at the time, but I made sure once I realized how much work they put into it. I mean, I saw it, but I didn't appreciate it until I started doing it myself.
Yeah.
And, you know, people at KRLD, Cameron Fairchild and I are friends. Last time I saw him, I'd love to work with him on a project again. So, you know, I wish I could go back to some of the people who I may have rubbed the wrong way. I know I did. And say to them, I should have been smarter. Times had changed, and I didn't. But as far as the future goes, if there was another opportunity to work with that group of people that you just can't wait to see every day, that you want to make smile, that you wouldn't think of letting down. I worked with, you know, the last 10 years of my radio career were the most miserable years of my life. And I was extremely harsh and judgmental in a lot of things, and it didn't lend itself to getting the best out of my teammates. And I don't blame them that some of them still don't talk to me, but most of them do. And what I've learned now is that, you know, the velvet hammer, that doesn't work. Doesn't work. Yeah. You've got to find a way. And I talk to a lot of people our age who are feeling discouraged and, I don't know if I can do this or whatever. And I want to be the person that says, look at all those mountains you've already climbed. This is just one more. You might be slower, but you can still climb it.
Yeah.
You can still get there. Remember all your victories and that sort of thing. And so that really showed up after radio and I parted from each other. And I wound up into these set construction crews with these amazing, genius creators, problem solvers, you know, designers, Imagineers. This most recent job that I've just taken on, same thing. And these people are all half my age. So not only do I get the benefit of the passion and the knowledge and the intensity, but I also get the energy.
Yeah.
You know, and that's
important.
That's what you got at the Freak.
Yeah, I think it is. I think that was a big part of what got me back into the place where I really hope I get a chance to do something again.
Oh, I would. I mean, who wouldn't? Once you've tasted that, you know, once you put your self in that situation, it is like breathing new air all over again. And so, if the long answer to this final answer, if I could find a situation like that, whatever it is, I'm open to it. That's why I got into acting. That's why I got into film. That's why I got into because these environments are full of these wonderful, young, creative, inspirational people. And I wouldn't know what to do if I didn't do something.
Yeah.
I'd be bored out of my mind. I love to fish. I love to hang out with my kids. If I get to see my grandkids, that's awesome. Garden in the backyard. You know, I used to love mowing the baseball diamonds before our Little League games. And I would make sure that it had the outfield hatch pattern just like Fenway Park, because those kids, it was their Fenway Park, you know? And I get to work in a lot of jobs now where I get to work with kids. That's why I did Santa Claus last November. And you get to do things like that and see smiles actually on their faces in a theater or in some sort of live performing setting. What else is there, you know, to send them home happy?
Well, you're a civic treasure, man.
Well,
we're lucky to have you. You are.
I don't know.
No, you are. You definitely are.
That's very kind of you. I don't know that it's generous too. Very, very generous. And you know, that's the thing. And I know you learned this early on. The Aussie Fiona, who worked as an actor in L.A., moved from Australia, lock, stock, and barrel, sight unseen, to L.A. to become an actress, and she did. I mean, she pulled it off. And she has been so good for me in so many ways in terms of teaching me new things that I wish I'd learned earlier. And that is, one of them is that when you're in a really good group, a troupe or a team or a cast, the generosity between each of the performers is what sets it apart. That's what happened at the zoo. That's what happened at the Ticket. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants everybody else to look good too, you know, and that's what happened at the Freak.
Yeah, we were on our way to that.
Who wouldn't want to be part of that?
have to be crazy not to want to be part of it.
I can't think of a better way to end it right there. Mr. Rayner, Rayner's not dead anymore, is he?
No.
Okay.
You can call me Rayner.
Okay.
Call me whatever. Just call me.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, the old gray wolf will do just fine. So good to have you in my little studio, sir.
Jody, I really enjoyed it. Like I say, you were a civic treasure. You were a legend, and I'm glad we're pals.
Thank you for your generosity in coming over here today and talking about stuff you've been talking about solid now for 3, 4, 5 weeks, but when we're talking about the fun we've gotten to have, I don't think we could ever stop talking about it.
Shouldn't stop talking about it.